Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fly the Coop. I am with Sharry Schmid, the president of Edina Realty. Welcome, Sharry. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Thank you for being with me today. It's been a couple months since we've been together, and I thought, what a perfect time to get Sharry back on the show to talk about the state of the market because we have a lot to talk about. It's been a dynamic time, and we
Yep.
want to put some truth out there and talk about what's really going on right now. So
All right.
let's start with what's going on with the media right now and the speak around rates. I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah. Well, it's yeah, obviously there's been a roller coaster, and approximately 2 weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago, interest rates took another hike up, and so of course that gets all the media attention.
Mm-hmm.
They went right around that 7%, a little bit over, but of course they also came down from that. But you don't hear about that piece or when they come down a little bit, and so. Regardless of how you look at it, interest rates in the sixes and the sevens most likely are here to stay. And historically speaking, those are good rates. When we look at collectively, all the way back to when interest rates were first, started being monitored, 6, 7%. If we hover in this range, even if we go a little bit above seven into the
Mm-hmm.
eight, and nobody knows for sure what's going to happen there. But again, historically speaking, those are really strong rates. So if interest rates at 2 to 3% for as long, and they were artificially held down, and that's the part we got to remember, for a long period of time, and
Mm-hmm.
arguably maybe too long. Here's what I would say overall, Carrie Ann, the market is adjusting to a healthy, more stable environment from where
Absolutely.
interest rates, inventory is going to rise a little bit, and we need that too.
Oh, we
So all in
totally
all,
need that.
I would say optimistic, very optimistic about where things are at. But what gets tough is
Yeah.
when we are following, especially national headlines, and there were some markets that really were boom markets during COVID. We didn't see that in our local market.
I agree. I completely agree with that. Stabilization, I'm using that word every day with the team because we haven't been in a healthy place for a long time and we need more inventory right now. When we jump from rates to inventory right now, what I'm seeing is some dynamic opportunity for all of these buyers that were losing in multiple offers, big multiple offer market in the spring market like 6 months ago versus what we're seeing now is such a more pleasant experience for everybody. There's some really great opportunity out there. Um, I don't, I think a lot of people think, oh, it's slowing down when really we're amping up right now. What do you think?
Here's a couple things that I would point out with it. Inventory has been rising. It's still overall a seller's market, but
Mm-hmm.
a much healthier seller's market than where we were at. And for all the buyers that are pausing because of rates right now, the one thing you got to keep in mind, yes, interest rates have crept up there, but when you factor in 6, 7, 9 months ago, I mean, Karen, we were seeing offers coming in 40, 50, 70,000 north of that.
With gap coverage, like people
Yeah.
are saying, listen, if it doesn't appraise, cool, we'll just we'll just cover the gap on that.
In a lot
Um,
of cases, and if you do the math on that, you're better off with a little higher interest rate now and being able to take some time to find the inventory versus
mhm.
paying over asking price on some of the situations that we were watching.
Totally agree with you. And that's the piece that's the number two. Those are the pieces of information. This is a great segue to talk about what's really happening. I mean, is there a high level truth to what the media says? It's the interpretation and how it's being explained. When in fact, the adjustment that we're seeing right now is inevitable, had to happen. You cannot continue with those rates of appreciation. It's not healthy. And being able to provide the buyer demographic with more inventory to choose from while still having a economical position when you really look at the math and stretch that out, a multiple offer and elevated sale prices versus a slightly higher rate. with a more moderate sale price, they're not really sitting down with the lender and doing the hard math out there. They don't really understand what that means. How do you communicate that to the audience on a, local level when we're getting bombarded with the speak around interest rates?
Well, I think two things. It is sitting down with a professional to look at it and to weigh what that actually looks like in real
Absolutely.
time. I think the other thing that's important to remember is you'll see headlines, housing prices are coming down, housing prices are depreciating. Here's the reality of what's actually happening. Housing prices were appreciating at a level of double digits year over year. And
That's right.
that isn't sustainable, and that's not typical for the housing market. Housing isn't depreciating right now. Housing isn't appreciating quite as quickly. So
Right.
there's still appreciation happening. It's just not happening at the same pace. Now, what does that look like in 23 and beyond? We'll wait and see. But today, looking at it, look at today, what's happening with it, instead of seeing 16, 17, and 18% appreciation, we're still seeing 3, 4, 5%, depending on a market area. It's all local. And again, that's where it comes back to really talking to the professionals and understand what's happening literally street by street.
I completely agree with that. So, in terms of even because you're running one of the largest brokerages in the Midwest with the Dinah Realty. So, when you're working with these agents, and I don't know what the percentile is now in terms of the newer agents coming into the ecosystem versus the more, seasoned agents, but what do you find what's the number one question when people are coming to you as an agent, communicating intel to their ecosystem?
Biggest question I get is this similar to 2008 and what's going to happen? They kind of go hand in hand. Is it
Interesting.
similar, and is it what's going to happen going forward?
Isn't that fascinating? Because it's
Yeah.
not at all like 2008.
No, and I said this recently, and you probably heard me, but I said this recently when the comparisons to 2008, and that whole downturn was created and was a result of really unstable, unhealthy foundations in the industry,
Mhm.
particularly on the mortgage side of things.
Right.
We don't have that this time around, and in 2008, real estate was in a depression.
Hmm.
We're going through right now an adjustment to a healthy market, because again, it was overheated, not sustainable. Very different, very, very different than what we saw in that 2008 timeframe.
Completely different.
And I've even seen, there's stats out there that talk about, because that's the big thing. Are we going to lose appreciation in our home? And this is the biggest thing that I think, and I hope people will understand and recognize. In our local market area, we saw over the last 5 years approximately, and there's some data out there that can show this and back this, 50% appreciation, which is just I'm sorry, 50,000, or I'm sorry, 50% in appreciation, which is a phenomenal increase.
Yeah.
Where other parts of the market saw 100 and 100 plus.
It's crazy.
So think about this, even if we do correct, and we haven't seen that yet, but even if we correct at a 5 or 10%, like some analysts are saying, and
Hmm.
oh my gosh, some of the headlines, it's 10 or 15%. Well, even if we see that, we still had a 50% over 5 years. That still puts a plus side of 30, 35, 40% or more. That's
Exactly. Well, and I just think it's fascinating, isn't it? That you would think that on a high level, that's what you'd want to share and communicate with people rather than filling their minds with this fear factor, which seems to be prevalent out there.
yeah.
Really, what is the truth behind when you look at an individual home and what it's valued at, short and long term, and what's the point of having the home, the lifestyle that
Mhm.
you're creating in that home, that it's serving a purpose, and more importantly, the alternative, which is renting in a marketplace that is so exorbitantly expensive, not just here, everywhere. And
Right.
equity, you know, it's an opportunity to build wealth and equity versus not.
Mhm.
The variable on how much per year, the percentile, is perceived by analytics that are true behind what's happened over the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. It's a remarkable time to buy a home. It's a remarkable time. And this rate is a non-player in my mind. It just doesn't make a difference because you can always refinance later on. Eventually they're going to come back down again.
Yeah, I heard a quote, Steve Murray put this out there and in a publication, but what he said is marry the home and date the rate.
Yeah, I love that. Tracy says that all the time. Love it,
Yep.
love it, love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know we're on a tight time frame. We have just a few minutes left. If you were to give your audience, both people in the industry that are working in the industry of selling, financing real estate, and the audience out there buying and selling their real estate, what would you share with them right now?
The piece I would like to state and to share with everyone is the real estate industry is not the stock market, and we have to stop looking
Right.
at it similar to the stock market. This is our home. This is our shelter. This is where our family and this is where we live. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't the stock market. So when we talk about rates, when we talk about other elements of it on the finance, yes, you have to be able to afford what you're going to and where you're going to live and where you're going to create those memories. But there's such an emotional component to it.
Right.
That's the part that has to be factored and considered. What do I want with my life? What do I
Mm-hmm.
need with my life right now as it relates to housing? And how do I go get that? And that's where your real estate agent can come in and really be that advocate and help you figure that part out.
Absolutely.
Waiting for something to happen in the markets and putting your life on hold, you
Mm-hmm.
can do that in the stock market. You can't do that with life.
That's absolutely right. That is a great way to end this segment. Absolutely. I just wanted everybody to hear a little, perspective from our dear president of Edina Realty, Sharry Schmid. Thank you so much, Sharry. We have dedicated doing this every couple months with one another. I think we are in a dynamic time of home ownership in a beautiful city in our beautiful state of Minnesota. And I thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I
Appreciate it.
appreciate it. Thanks.